Aloha everyone and welcome to another Tinker's Academy video. I'm your host Kay Elmer and this video is on the subject of nicotine. And so what's really interesting is that during COVID, the use of nicotine kind of stood out as one of the differentiators between people who got really, really sick and people who didn't or didn't even catch it at all. And that kind of came out back in 2020. And ever since then, it's kind of just, this idea has kind of just sit on the back burner, but it's really kind of coming to light lately as a potential medical miracle, a substance that has been kind of overlooked by the medical establishment. So what I kind of wanted to do is do a little deep dive on it. Is there such a thing as a little deep dive? Don't know, but that's what I'm using as a phrase. And so what I did was I loaded up a bunch of stuff in Notebook, just to kind of take a look at all the material that's available out there. And it summarized it into a little video that I'd like to show you just as an explainer. Like, here is what this issue is all about. So without further ado, let me jump into that. And then let's walk through, once the video is over, let's kind of talk about what is that protocol. And then, and what else is going on as far as the protocol is concerned. So without further ado, here is the AI version of all of the material I've collected on nicotine as a health cure.
Let's talk about something we all think we know inside and out: nicotine. For decades, right, it's been painted as public enemy number one in the war on smoking. But now a really strange new conversation is bubbling up, and it's completely reframing nicotine, not as the bad guy, but maybe, just maybe, as a potential hero. So what's the deal here? Is nicotine just a crutch to help people quit an addiction, or could it actually be the key to treating some of the most frustrating, stubborn, chronic illnesses out there today? That's the huge paradox we're going to try and unpack. Okay, so let's just lay this out. On one side, you've got the nicotine patch. We've all seen it. It's in every pharmacy, and its job is simple: help smokers quit. But on the other side, you've got patient groups and even some researchers saying, hey, what if this could treat long COVID or Parkinson's? That is a massive leap. And you've got to ask yourself, how on earth did we get to this point? To get to the bottom of it, our first stop is the scientific seed. We're going to see how this whole thing grew from a simple observation in lab rats into a pretty radical idea. And believe it or not, this doesn't start in a clinic, it starts in a lab with animals. Yep, you heard that right. The tiny seed for this entire movement can be traced all the way back to a 2004 paper. It was published by the American Society for Microbiology, and it was looking at what nicotine patches did to the immune systems of these little critters called Lewis rats. And what they found was pretty wild. The rats that were wearing nicotine patches, their antibody response was way down. Their T-cell proliferation was significantly reduced, and maybe the most striking part, a fever that they induced with turpentine was seriously weakened. So, bottom line, the nicotine was actively calming down the rats' immune and inflammatory systems. And that led the researchers to a pretty clear conclusion, at least in this animal model. Nicotine was acting as an immune suppressive. Now, what does that mean? It's just a fancy way of saying it's a substance that can put the brakes on an overactive immune system. And that finding, well, it would just sit there for years, waiting for someone to rediscover it. Okay, now let's hit the fast forward button. We're going to see how that little scientific finding in rats bloomed into a full-on grassroots movement among patients. I mean, people who were desperate for relief from these super complex illnesses, they started connecting the dots themselves. And this is where the story gets really, really personal. You start seeing reports just like this one popping up all over the internet. People with these awful long-term symptoms, people who tried everything else, and they were suddenly getting better, sometimes in just a few days. All from a simple, over-the-counter nicotine patch. And this quote, wow, this one really captures the hope that's driving this whole trend. Here's another person reporting that their main symptoms of chronic fatigue, that soul-crushing exhaustion and what they call post-exertional malaise, were just gone in about 3 weeks. Now, look, these are just anecdotes, they're not clinical trials, but for people who are suffering, these stories are incredibly powerful. So what do these patients think is actually going on here? Well, the main theory is that nicotine is flipping a switch on something called the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway. Think of it like a direct line from your nervous system to your immune system. It's a pathway that basically tells your immune system to calm down, to stop the runaway inflammation that many believe is at the root of things like long COVID and ME/CFS. And based on all these shared experiences, a kind of unofficial user's guide has popped up online. It's a pretty careful, structured plan. You start with a really low dose for a few days, then you bump it up for another week, and then, and this is key, you stop completely after 10 days. That break is seen as absolutely crucial because the theory is it keeps your body's receptors from getting used to the nicotine, so it might still work if you try it again later. But hold on, because the story doesn't end there. Not even close. There's another, way more extreme perspective that takes this whole thing from patient-led discovery to a full-blown global conspiracy. According to this point of view, which is championed by people like Dr. Brian Ardis, the very idea that nicotine is addictive isn't a scientific fact at all. It's a lie, a multi-decade lie that was carefully created to keep all of us away from what they claim is one of the most powerful healing substances on the entire planet. And this theory, well, it's got its own version of history. It all starts back in 1994, when the FDA supposedly started pushing this big lie about addiction. Then, in 2020, with the pandemic, nicotine's real power was apparently rediscovered. And now, the claim is that governments around the world are trying to restrict access to it because its therapeutic power has been revealed. The claims from this side of the aisle are, well, they're nothing short of extraordinary. They don't just see nicotine as a helpful little anti-inflammatory. No, they see it as the ultimate antidote, a universal cure that has been deliberately hidden from every single one of us. And the list of illnesses it supposedly cures it's just staggering. It covers pretty much every major chronic and neurodegenerative disease you can think of. MS, Alzheimer's, brain tumors, type 1 diabetes. It's even positioned as an antidote to things they call bioweapons, like venom, which just takes the whole claim to an entirely different universe. So, okay, let's just take a breath. Where does all of this leave us? We've gone from a peer-reviewed rat study to really hopeful patient stories, all the way to a massive conspiracy theory. How are we supposed to make sense of these wildly different takes on the exact same substance? And this is really where it all comes in to focus. On one side, you have a modest, grounded, verifiable scientific finding. Nicotine patches lowered fever in rats. It's interesting. It suggests a biological mechanism that makes some sense. And on the other side, you have the unbelievable claim that nicotine can dissolve brain tumors in a matter of hours. The gap between those two ideas is just immense. Ultimately, this whole story about the nicotine patch is a perfect case study for the world we live in right now, isn't it? It sits right at the chaotic intersection of established science, the desperation of patients, and wild conspiratorial thinking. It's a powerful reminder that behind one simple product can be this incredibly complex web of hope, theory, and belief, and it leaves every one of us to try and figure out where the evidence actually leads.
Okay, so that was kind of helpful. That's kind of why I use AI. It kind of just summarizes all this stuff. I mean, literally books and videos and studies and all that stuff you cram into a notebook, and these AI things pop out these explainer videos, which are kind of helpful. It's like 8 minutes, real quick, kind of get a gist of what's in the the knowledge base that you create. But I do want to kind of point out that it is really actually being taken very seriously now. It's getting nicotine in terms of its being able to treat other things. Like right now, there are active clinical trials on treating ADHD, depression, Parkinson's, and sarcoma with nicotine patches. So when you go, like when you're taking a look at, these clinical trials, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, there's this study, there's a clinical trial out there that's, these are all being funded. When things get funded, that people are taking it seriously, right? So they're studying ADHD on clinical trials. They're looking at nicotine in the brain reward pathways. They're looking at nicotine patches for, helping people with Parkinson's. They're doing clinical trials on nicotine patches with, people with sarcomas, right? Cancer. So, it's kind of really fascinating that, it's like nicotine, like the explainer video said, it's always been considered this demon, and it's been treated so poorly in terms of just, looking at it from, like it has, detrimental effects to your health, and it's been considered the bad guy all this time. And all of a sudden now, since COVID, nicotine has this incredible potential to be something that could be very beneficial to our health. And how do you do that? And that's called the nicotine patch protocol. So let's kind of walk you through what that is. Now, I do want to point out real quick that I did create that notebook. There's a link below to the notebook. Here are the sources that I've collected. And again, there's not a lot of sources out there right now in terms of covering this as a topic. I only found one book. Dr. Ardis is definitely the leading guy that's kind of pushing the concept. And, he put out a really great video on the subject. But here's this notebook. Again, you can query the notebook. So when I query the notebook and just said, hey, give me, what is the nicotine patch protocol, so that this can become actionable for you in bullets, and then it comes right out here. I did save it as a note in the notebooks. You can go here and click on this if you want to reference back to it versus saving screenshots of this presentation and that sort of thing. So this is how you use the notebook. Just use it as an AI, and you can literally query and ask questions. If you have questions about this, then you can query the knowledge base by just typing in right here. So there'll be a link to this in the video description below, as well as a link to the clinical trials and so forth. But let's talk about the patch protocol real quick. Now, really what it comes down to is that there's there's always that, disclaimer, consult a medical professional before you try anything. But, I just want to throw that out there, right? But bottom line is the starting dose right now is basically it's always the, go slow, go low when you're first trying something out. So, trying a 7 milligram patch, wearing it for 24 hours. Sensitive users are told to try half of a 7 milligram patch for 3 days. Dr. Ardis also suggests cutting the 14 milligram patch into 6 pieces. This is all for just when you first start out and you're not a nicotine user. You kind of want to go slow and low, right? Slow. Don't do too much, and low for low doses. But the thing is that Dr. Ardis does recommend for long COVID using a 2 milligram nicotine gum, not 4, 1 piece 4 times daily for 2 weeks. Okay, that's the protocol there. Now, if you've got long COVID or vaccine injuries, the protocol is wear a 7 milligram patch daily for 1 week. And then basically after improvement, then you go to a preventative protocol, and then, basically the whole idea though is to wear a 7 milligram patch every day until symptoms improve. And then at that point, then you drop down to preventative, which is the whole cutting a 14 milligram patch into 6 pieces, 1 little small piece per day applied to the rib cage or upper arm. Okay, so that's kind of the idea, right? You start slow and low. If you're normal, if you've got something you're working on, long COVID, vaccine injury, right? Then you want to do the whole 7 milligram patch every day till symptoms improve. And then once it improves, you just go to the preventative protocol, which is a lot less of a dose of nicotine. Now, the whole idea here, application duration, you want to apply once daily in the morning. You want to remove it at night. After 3 days, you want to stop. And that's kind of the thing too, is to stop after and then give yourself a 10-day break, so you don't become too accustomed to it. You want your body to kind of have that hermetic effect, and then definitely take breaks in between rounds, and then you can go ahead and start up again after that. Now, the side effects in the literature do state that there's possible nausea, headaches, dizziness, skin irritation, vivid dreams, flu-like symptoms. So stay hydrated is really important. That's definitely a recommendation. And then really watching on your sensitization by not doing it constantly forever, right? And then the one thing that Dr. Ardis basically stipulates is that nicotine really isn't addictive. The whole conspiracy theory out there is that, cigarettes have like 3,000 chemicals in them. And, that's what's really the problem, not necessarily nicotine. I'm a lifetime nicotine user. I smoke a cigar a day or two. And honestly, throughout the entire ordeal we just went through with the panini, I never once had any issues at all. In fact, I haven't been sick for a decade. And so, I attribute that to, I didn't even think to attribute that to nicotine. I've been doing other things as a biohacker, namely C60 and, brown gas hydrogen, that sort of thing. So, but, it is interesting. And it is something that really is popping out on the radar now for those of you who are biohackers and for those of you who are interested in your health, to really seriously take a look at nicotine. I mean, the science is there. There's really good literature on it now. 5 years ago, there was really nothing. So there's literature on there. People are, you've got, pharma's investing in it, and they're looking at it as a possible thing too for all those clinical trials. So, hey, there's something there. So otherwise, the general guidance on nicotine patch protocol is go slow. Again, allow your body time to heal, and patches are safer than smoking and vaping, because of the harmful byproducts, as I just mentioned. So, it's kind of one of the reasons I used to be a cigarette smoker, 40 years ago. And I quit, and I just just started smoking cigars, and that's how I've been smoking ever since. Is I just got rid of all the chemicals and just smoke cigars because if you're a cigar smoker, you understand. Anyway, so that's the nicotine patch protocol. That's the idea behind it. It's all tucked away in my notebook. Links in the video description below. Definitely something worth a try. I mean, it's because it's not just for COVID. If you look at the literature, it is for a host of other things. So if you've had some mysterious thing that hasn't been, you haven't been able to find a solution for, hey, you know what? Just give this a try. I would do that. I would absolutely give this a try. Why not? It's just nicotine. And so, yeah, so that's something to think about. It's something new, something that has potential. And it might work, and so there's almost nothing to lose, and so the whole idea here, if go slow and low. Okay, so anyway, so thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. You can find more information about me at the Tinkers Academy, and also too, I've got a couple of Telegram groups that we chat about stuff like this all the time. So there's a health and hacking Telegram group, and then there's one specifically for C60, carbon 60, and biohacking. So there's two kind of different groups that I kind of moderate on Telegram. So links to all of this stuff in the video description below. Hope this was helpful, and you guys, good health to you, and have a great day. Aloha.